friends, it's Anne with Doubting Believer, and I often film these things sitting, and one of the reasons why, in the apartment building I live in, it's 100 years old, and the floors squeak when I move around. But I'm gonna try it today, and try not to move around too much, but apologies for the squeaking that may come through this video. We may have to go back to sitting, but let's just see. You know, Lent is almost upon us, and traditionally the Sunday before Lent is the time that we read the story of the Transfiguration. It's when Jesus goes up on a mountain with the disciples, and I'm going to tell you that story in a sec. But I do want to remind you that Lent does begin on Wednesday, March 5th, and I hope that is Ash Wednesday, and I hope that you will find a place in your community, if you don't have a church that you're a part of, to go and have some ashes imposed on your forehead, either at a service or on the street or drive-by ashes, to be reminded that not only from dust we came, to dust we shall return, but that in life and in death, we belong to God. So please go get your ashes in church or on the street or in a drive-through ash situation this Wednesday. And if you don't know yet what you're going to do for Lent in order to grow spiritually, to get closer to God as we approach Easter, I encourage you to check out A Gentle Lent from Doubting Believer. It is not a real hardcore discipline, nor is it a daily devotion, but it is 13 exercises that you can do anytime throughout Lent to help you be more gentle with yourself and with others. Because unlike many people these days, I really do believe that there is real strength in gentleness. So the story of the Transfiguration, I'm just going to tell it to you, but if you want to read it in your Bible, there are 3 different places, all in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Each is a little bit different, but they are essentially the same story. So Jesus gets Peter, James, and John, 3 of his disciples, to go with him up on a mountaintop. And while they're up there, all of a sudden, Jesus just transforms and starts to glow from the inside out, just shining super bright. And if that weren't enough, all of a sudden, Moses and Elijah appear on either side of him. Now, Moses and Elijah have something in common. They were the 2 people in the Old Testament who didn't have an earthly death. Their bodies just got taken up to heaven. So there's always kind of this expectation that they were going to show up again. And sure enough, here they are with Jesus, shiny Jesus. And Peter, super excited about all this, overwhelmed, but says, you know what, let's build tents for all of you. We can build tents for you guys, and we'll just stay up here and hang on this mountaintop. That sounds great. But about that time, a big booming voice comes from the heavens. This is my son. Listen to him. And then Jesus is not shiny anymore. Moses and Elijah are gone too, and everybody heads back down the mountain. Now, like most preachers who've been doing this for a while, I kind of tend to lean into my standard message for Transfiguration Sunday. I kind of have a standard message that I try to change up so it's not exactly the same. That's not what I want to share today, but I will just give you the cliff notes so you can ponder on that as well. My standard TFIG Sunday message is, yes, it is important that we all go up on the mountaintop to those thin places, those places that for us, the distance between heaven and earth shrinks and we feel closer to God. It's important to have those mountaintop experiences, but like Peter, we may want to stay on the mountaintop, but we can't. We got to come back down so that we can share with everyone else the love and light that we experienced on the mountaintop. If you are a child of the 80s and you listen to Christian music, you know this message because you know Amy Grant's song, Mountaintop. Encourage you to take a listen to that, and that song will pretty much give you the gist of the message I usually give on Transfiguration Sunday. But, and you've heard me say this many times if you have listened to me at all, one of the things I love so much about the Bible is that you can look at a story that you have read and heard and told and preached on time and time again and still find that it says something new to you. And that's what happened to me on this Transfiguration Sunday. So I want us to think about something. Jesus didn't take all 12 disciples up on the mountain. He chose 3 to go up. He chose 3 people to whom he was going to reveal his true self. These were people that he trusted to share with his true nature, his essential nature, absolutely who he was. Kind of literally, I guess you can't kind of literally do anything, but soul was out there glowing and on display for everybody. He trusted them enough to tell them who he really was. And I hope you have Peter, James, and Johns in your life, people for whom you can be who you truly are. Because if you can't, I know it's exhausting. I don't always get to be who I am. I have places and spaces I go into where I have to conceal some of who I am. The thing that comes to mind easiest is when I have to go to my husband's business functions, which doesn't happen often. And I will say, the people he works with are lovely. I really like everyone I have ever met that is part of the people he works with. But when I go to these things, I listen to people talk business and sports, two things I have almost zero interest in. I ask all the right questions, I smile and I nod politely, and I never say my feelings about, when people make $1 billion, they should just be given a trophy that says, congrats, you won capitalism, and then everything else goes to healthcare and education. I don't talk about how I don't support the capitalist system in theory. I mean, I do in practice because most of us do. And I certainly don't start talking about my concern over the growing gap between the very, very wealthy and, quite frankly, the rest of the people on earth. So I don't do any of that. Again, I smile and I nod and I ask all the right questions, and at the end of the evening, I am absolutely exhausted. So if you find yourself living that kind of life all the time, I do hope you can find more places and spaces with people filled with people with whom you can share who you really are. Just be blah, just unabashedly you, and it's okay. But what I want to talk about more than do we know people with whom we can be ourselves, I want us to think about who we are, Peter, James, and John, for. Meaning, are we the kind of people that others feel that they can be absolutely themselves with us? That we are safe people with whom they can be vulnerable and show who they really are and don't have to worry about pretending to be anyone else. And I guess I got to thinking about this because there's so much right now. There's so many people who are having to pretend to be someone they're not. Our trans siblings, with all the anti-trans legislation and the seemingly growing trans hate, a lot of them are having to pretend to be someone they're not. They can't be who they really are. Even many of our gay, lesbian, and queer friends cannot be authentically and exactly who they are in a lot of places and spaces right now. I think about our immigrant friends, the people who are undocumented, and even right now, people with the proper documentation. People are literally coming for them. And so, yeah, they are having to pretend to be something other than exactly who they are. And of course, this is not just true for immigrants or people who are part of the LGBTQ community. This is true for all of us. Many of us have to go into spaces and places where we can't be exactly who we are. I know a lot of people right now don't feel they can be authentically themselves in their workplaces, in their neighborhoods, and even in their own families because things are so divisive right now. So this idea that there are a lot of people out there who don't feel like it is a safe place to be vulnerable and be exactly who they are, to be exactly the person God created them to be, means we all need to think about how we can be the Peter, James, and John in this story. How we can be the people who create spaces where others can be exactly who they are. Now, completely on brand for the disciples, when all this goes down, Peter is not getting it. His first move is to, hey, let's build some tents and we'll all just stay up here and hang out on the mountaintop and it'll be great. And that's when the big booming voice comes in, and then they all end up going down the mountain because, yeah, they aren't going to stay up on the mountaintop. But the big booming voice, the voice of God, comes in and says, this is my son, listen to him. Now, what if God didn't say that just because Jesus was God's son? What if that voice of listen to him was not just because Jesus was fully human, fully God? What if part of the listen to him was because he was the one who had just been vulnerable? He was the one who had just revealed his true nature to these three people that he trusted with that information. So often, when people do reveal their true selves to us for the first time, when we have created a space and a place where they feel comfortable doing that, so often our first inclination is to rush in and decide what needs to be done next. But what if we stop and make sure we listen to the person who's been brave enough and bold enough to reveal their true selves to us? What if instead of rushing in and deciding what needs to happen next or what they need, we take some time and we listen to them? So on this Transfiguration Sunday, go have those mountaintop experiences and bring down what you have experienced to the rest of the world. But also, think about who James, John, and Peter were to Jesus in this story. How can we be that for others, especially in this time when so many people are out there having to pretend to be something other than who they truly are, who God created them to be? Of course, ideally, the church is that space. The church that so often says, all are welcome and come as you are, but when it gets down to it, doesn't really mean that. May we all strive to be the kind of people for whom others can be exactly the person God created them to be. May we create places and spaces where people can come and be nobody else but exactly who they are. And when they do, and it is revealed to us for the first time exactly who they are, and we may be surprised and shocked and taken aback, rather than rushing in and deciding what to do next, may we listen to them. Friends, I hope you have a blessed Lenten season and find it is a time when you draw closer to God, you grow more deeply in your faith, and you are ready with an open heart to celebrate the joy and the hope that comes with Easter.